In the vast savannas of prehistoric East Africa, where the great migration routes crossed ancient rivers and survival meant understanding the delicate balance between water and land, there lived a boy named Jabari. He was 10 winters old, born to a fishing family who lived along the banks of a massive river that would one day be called part of the Nile system. His people were river dwellers, building their homes on stilts above seasonal floodwaters, traveling by dugout canoes, living from fish and riverside plants. Jabari had learned to swim before he could run, to read the river's moods like others read faces, and most importantly, to recognize which waters were safe and which belonged to the hippos. Hippos were not the clumsy, harmless creatures that children's stories would later make them. They were prehistoric terror, massive, territorial, and deadlier than any predator. These ancient hippos were even larger than modern ones, reaching 4 meters in length and 3 tons in weight, with jaws that could snap a full-grown crocodile in half and teeth like spears. More humans died from hippo attacks than from lions or crocodiles combined. The river belonged to the hippos first, and humans lived there only through careful respect of invisible boundaries. That dry season had been particularly harsh. The river had shrunk to half its normal width, concentrating both prey and predator into smaller territories. This forced dangerous overlaps. Hippopods, usually spread across kilometers of river, were compressed into crowded pools. Lions and hyenas, driven by drought-killed prey herds, ventured closer to the water than usual, desperate and bold. The river had become a pressure cooker of territorial tensions, where one mistake could trigger violence. Jabari's morning began with his father's fishing crew preparing to check their gim nets in the shallows. As the youngest, Jabari's job was to watch the riverbank for hippos while the men worked, a crucial role because hippos could charge from water with shocking speed, capsizing canoes and killing anyone too slow to escape. He sat on a high observation platform, scanning the water with practiced eyes, noting the positions of every visible hippopod. Then he saw something that made his heart stop. A baby hippo, perhaps 3 weeks old, stranded on a sandbar in the middle of the river. It was crying pitifully, a high-pitched distress call that carried clearly across the water. The sandbar was small, maybe 10 meters across, created by shifting currents during the previous night. The baby must have wandered onto it when water levels were different, and now, with the current changed, it was cut off from the main hippopod on the opposite shore. But that wasn't the worst part. On the riverbank, 30 meters from the sandbar, a coalition of 3 male lions had noticed the stranded calf. Lions that hunted together were bolder than solitary hunters, and these 3 looked desperate, ribs visible, eyes hollow with hunger. One was already wading into the shallow water, testing the depth, while the other 2 paced the bank. They were calculating whether the meal was worth the risk of entering the water. Jabari looked across the river toward the main hippopod. The mother was there. He could tell by her frantic behavior, the way she paced the shoreline, bellowing in distress. But between her and the sandbar lay deep, fast-moving current, too dangerous even for an adult hippo to cross safely. She was trapped on one side, her baby on the other, with predators closing in. Jabari should have alerted his father and the fishing crew, should have let nature take its course. Hippos killed more of his people than any other animal. Why risk his life to save one? But watching that baby crying for its mother, watching those lions preparing to kill it, watching the mother's helpless rage, Jabari couldn't. The thought of that baby dying in terror while its mother watched was unbearable. He made a decision that was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. He grabbed a long pole used for punting canoes and ran along the riverbank toward a position closest to the sandbar. The water between shore and sandbar was shallow here, maybe waist deep, but that meant it was prime hippo territory. Adult hippos often rested in shallow water, nearly invisible beneath the surface. One wrong step could mean death. Jabari's father, seeing his son's intent, shouted in horror and alarm, but Jabari was already wading into the water, using the pole to feel ahead for hidden hippos and deep holes. Each step was calculated terror. The water was murky. He couldn't see what lay beneath. Any moment, a hippo could surge up and bite him in half. The lions across the channel saw him and paused, confused by this new factor. Step by careful step, Jabari waded toward the sandbar. The baby hippo saw him coming and cried louder, unsure whether this human was threat or help. Across the river, the mother hippo saw a human approaching her baby and bellowed with rage, trapped by the current, unable to reach either her calf or the human threatening it. Jabari reached the sandbar and climbed onto it. The baby hippo backed away, frightened. It was small for its species, but still large, perhaps 150 kilograms, with tiny tusks just beginning to emerge. Up close, Jabari could see it was exhausted, terrified, and dehydrated. It had been stranded for hours, maybe all night. The lead lion had waded deeper now, committed to the hunt. Water reached its belly, slowing it but not stopping it. The other 2 lions were entering the water behind it. Jabari had maybe 2 minutes before they reached the sandbar. He couldn't carry the hippo, it was far too heavy. He couldn't frighten it into the water toward shore. It was too panicked to respond to guidance. His plan, thin as it was, collapsed into desperate improvisation.
He positioned himself between the baby hippo and the approaching lions, raising his pole like a weapon. He shouted at the lions, trying to make himself seem large and dangerous. The lions slowed, assessing the strange behavior. Humans didn't